Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to be here today talking about social media in all its different angles that you can attack it from. We've got a really great panel. Panel, would you like to come out? We've got Paul Newnham from Beans is How. We've got Max and Joanna from Root the Future. And we've got Alexa from Lotus. So what is really, we can have a seat first. Do you want to sit down? Everyone can kind of.
How are we going to do it?
But I think one thing I want to start with is the statistic that 71% of Gen Z have come across content about food and nutrition on their social media, and then 58% of millennials. So they're saying a kind of, every 10 posts, they're getting something on it. So social media is undoubtedly, and I think we heard from Eve yesterday, it is such a powerful way to change and influence consumer behavior. And you think that it's just as simple as setting up an Instagram and doing a few posts, but it's really not. And there are so many different ways that you can go about using this modern form of communication to help influence behavior and get people to eat more beans. And I'm really excited to be discussing this today with our panel because we have some really differing approaches. We've got kind of campaigns that are actually in real life campaigns that end up being kind of done through social media. We've got events. We've got I suppose I'm trying to capture what your big fish thing is.
A big moment.
Big moment things that allow user-generated content. And from my perspective, from Bold Bean Co's perspective, we've got our own content in-house. So it's going to be really interesting to run through today and hopefully inspiring you all to put more value for your marketing teams, give them more of a budget because it really is an amazing way to change consumer perception. So I want to start with our approach at Bold Bean Co. I mentioned it yesterday, but we are a bean brand in the UK. We're only 2 years old, but we've already got it's actually over 70,000 followers, so we've gone up since I sent in this presentation. We're in major supermarkets in the UK, and we're known for not only our beans, but our content on social media. And what's incredible about this is that our content has become so known that it's now actually something we sell. So we have supermarkets who give us free exposure in exchange for us doing a content post for them. And this is in FMCG, a world where, or CPG, I think, in the States, a world where actually getting that kind of exposure is really expensive, but we're getting it for free because of our social media content. And I want to go a bit back to where it comes from, because I'm a firm believer that brand strategy is really important to build a brand that resonates with the modern day consumer. Because, as we learned yesterday, purpose is so key for the modern day consumer, particularly Gen Zs and millennials. And they now want to relate to their brands. They now want to feel a sense of identity by buying that brand. It's saying something about them. And why our mission is so important is that it trickles into our marketing strategy. So it's a key way of delivering on our mission is by giving people the best of beans, not in just our product, but in our recipes. So this is how I kind of like to say, this is how our mission makes our marketing rock, because it's that combination of an amazing product with amazing marketing that makes people bean obsessed. And we couldn't do one without the other. And I think that it is so key to value marketing just as much as what you're selling, because it's that telling that story. And I'll kind of trickle back a bit to, our approach with it. There's loads of different ways, as we've learned, for how you can sell beans and how you can market beans from a health perspective, from a sustainability perspective. And I'm just going to share our approach, which is about making them just desirable. I've got Oatly up here. Oatly is a really interesting brand because I distinctly remember when I left uni, a uni friend of mine who has, he has bacon sandwiches for breakfast, was ordering an oat milk flat white. And then for dinner, he'd have, some cheesy pasta. So I'm like, you're not allergic to milk. Why are you buying Oatly? And he bought Oatly because he thinks it's cool. He thinks it's desirable. He's not buying it because he thinks it's sustainable or healthy. He's buying it because he likes it. They've managed to create something desirable, and that is what we at Bold Bean Co. are trying to do. Yes, beans are healthy, and we do talk about that every now and then. Yes, beans are sustainable, and that is the whole reason why I started Bold Bean Co. But we don't talk about it too much because people don't like being sold to. And as we know, this is a stat recently, taste is what drives people. So you've got to have something that tastes amazing, and that is what we as a brand double down on. So you'll never see a picture of a dried bean on our social media feed. And that's because you can't eat a dried bean. So it's not very desirable to see. And we want to make you tempted. We want to inverse the reputation of beans and show people that they can be delicious, and this trickles into what we do on social media. This is just a phrase, big, indulgent, velvety beans. Like, people are like, what? I didn't realize beans could be these characteristics, and that is what we're trying to show people. And this comes through in our recipe content. I just want to show, aged Parmesan, 2 jars of bold beans, a bunch of crispy sage, a bunch of people around my table who won't stop talking about beans. Just by putting beans in the context of these delicious kind of words, you're immediately seeing them in a new context and a new light. You're not seeing them in a sad salad which doesn't have anything going on. It's just what Alice was talking about yesterday. It's about the language you use, but it's also about how you present that. So our strategy when it comes to social, the strategy that underpins it is this making beans desirable. So we don't sell our beans. Imagine if we had this picture on a social media feed. What's that giving to you as a consumer? Absolutely nothing. I, as a consumer, if I'm following someone on social, I need to be entertained, I need to be educated, or I need to be inspired. And that picture is not doing any of that. However, our whole social media strategy is about giving. We give delicious recipe content. And we don't mind if you're not using our beans. We're delivering on our mission by making you eat more beans, by sharing inspiring recipes. This is what we call a beanotto, which is a risotto, but instead of using rice, you're using beans. And these are some of our most popular recipes. And I think it's a really great way to get people engaged with what you're doing. And because we're giving them something for free, we're giving them delicious recipes, they're following us, they're engaging with us, but also they're thinking, these guys really care about what they're doing. I could use a competitor's beans, and they could, but that mission, we think, will pay back in time as people come to see us as a brand that are mission-driven. They might just try our beans, and once they try it, we know that they'll come back. So we kind of have this philosophy of, you shouldn't have to persuade someone to eat beans. And we let the professionals do that. There are, nutritionists and dietitians, they're already pushing beans. It's a huge thing in the UK is the role of personalized nutrition. And this is really exciting. I haven't heard it spoken about too much over the conference, but Brands like Zoe are massive in the UK right now, and they are pushing beans, beans, beans. So we don't need to do that. Other people are doing that. We need to make them exciting. This is charred tomato with harissa, and we've got a dill and caper yogurt. It takes 10 minutes. It's completely delicious, and it's one of our most popular recipes. So that's kind of like the first part of our social media strategy, is that we give free, delicious recipe content, and that excites people. And it's underpinned by our mission to make people obsessed with beans. And then the second half, which I touched on yesterday, is actually how we use social media in a broader sense outside our own channel, and that is through influencer marketing. So I just want to share this article that came out by Eater a few months ago. And as you can say here, this is an influencer who's saying, I didn't realize how many people were noticing this trend. But someone commented on one of my videos the other day, why is my feed full of all of these British girls and butter beans? And I'm actually going to take credit for that. I think that Bold Bean Co. is the reason behind that, because we gift them a lot of beans. And they always have them in their cupboard. This is Melissa Hemsley, a top chef in the UK. And they are encouraged, they're using these beans, they're excited about these beans, and they are talented people, and they are changing how people are using beans. So butter beans, in the UK, the top performing SKUs were chickpeas and red beans. Butter beans are growing and growing, and our bestseller is butter beans. And I think that gifting to influencers is a really key part. I think in the States, there's a brand called Grazia. It's an olive oil brand. All the creators have it. They give away, I think it's like 25 cases a week to creators, so that they always have them to hand. And this is what I'd encourage anyone to do. Gift to these people, because they are the change makers, and they are really going to get people seeing beans on their social media and eating them. So that's a bit of a background of our approach, which is obviously, creating our own content and becoming creators ourselves, and also leveraging the influence of talented people in the food space to get them to use beans more. But now I'm really excited to pass over to Paul, who's going to discuss a bit more from a kind of restaurant campaign angle, which sounded very cool in New York.
Thank you. And I just want to say, building on what you were saying, Amelia, I think you guys have been incredibly successful in the way that you've shifted the way that you tell stories. And there's some real insights there that's some of the best practice around the world. And I also think there's one thing to add. It's also about integrity of the person telling the story. And you've brought not only yourself, but also your team into telling those stories. And so people relate to people. And so people know people that are inside your company. And as a result of that, they can relate to your company. And they can relate to the obsession you have with beans, and also the obsession that, that passion. And then they can connect to that. And that gets them excited. And people then want to be a part of that. So it builds community. And so I think it's really important to keep that in mind, because I think some of these tactics work because of some of those special ingredients, which are making choices around how you actually have authenticity in the way that you show up and the way that you're doing it. And the campaign that I want to talk a little bit about beans on the menu and how we're going about that. And part of it is actually tied into some of the things we're wanting to learn from people on the stage and many others. But part of it is about how do you actually find relationships and community to work with. And it's finding other people to tell the story about whatever you're working on. And I think this is really critical, because if you want to get reach, you can either build your own audience, or you can actually engage a community that has an audience. There's people like Alice, there's people like Amelia that have communities, these guys that have communities and followings that are very loyal to those communities and followings. They know how to talk to them. You don't have to tell them how to talk to them. You should trust them, that they will talk to their community well. And so beans on the menu for us, we've got a campaign to double the consumption of beans, peas and lentils around the world. We have very, very limited capacity in a very, very big world. So the only way for us to do that is to work in partnership and alliances. And one of our key allies is chefs. Chefs and recipe creators, people that are working with communities around the world in different ways to communicate. Some of them have restaurants, some of them don't have restaurants, some of them visit restaurants. And so we have tapped into that community through what we called Beans on the Menu. And we did a menu challenge, we did a test, and I just want to tell you a little bit about some of the learnings from there. So we launched this in New York during Climate Week. So Climate Week in New York happens in September over the same time as the UN gathers world leaders from around the world. So it's chaos in New York. New Yorkers pretty much hate it because all the security comes in, they shut down streets, everything, there's helicopters, there's chaos. Like just to get across town is just a disaster, anything on the east side. But it also brings huge attention, and there's a lot of different meetings and influencers and people and lots of conversations. And so we looked at that and said, how do we inspire this really influential city, which people look at from around the world? How do we get beans into restaurants, onto menus? Because if you go into a lot of restaurants, you can get beans in a Mexican restaurant, or you can get them in certain, but they're not in all the restaurants. And so we worked together with a team to kind of develop, who have these relationships with chefs, to develop a strategy to actually get beans on the menu. And it was through the relationships, to be honest, through people ringing other people and saying, hey, would you guys be a part of this? And they said, what do we have to do? And you said, well, we want you to put a bean dish on the menu for the next 8 weeks. And they're like, yeah, okay, we can do that. We love beans. But no one's asked them.
Were they motivated by anything in particular? Was there any kind
there was
of
a couple
pitch?
of key pitches that we put into it. So we worked also with a PR company and with a range of influencers. So we mapped all the big social influencers in food for the city. So the people that do the restaurant reviews, the people that tap into different ways. And they came in and basically looked at how do we actually think about this. So we brought them together to start with. We found the hottest restaurant in New York. They have a very, very small private room, and I'm talking, it was like very small. It was like almost one table plus a little bit, 1.5 of these tables. We crammed in there about 35 people. These people, all with million-plus followers, somewhere between 800 and 2 million followers, some of the top restaurant chefs, they went there because they can't get a booking at this restaurant, and they wanted to try it. So they went in there, we had bean-based dishes, we just had a bit of a chat. We told them, this is our vision, this is what we're wanting to do. They loved it, they shared it, they created content around it, and that started relationship. Because there was also they met people and they went, oh, I know you now, this is not some foreign concept, I can kind of relate, and there was a conversation. And then we basically asked them to put their dish together, and then we got social media influencers to go and visit their restaurant. And this was really interesting to work out how do you do this, because social media influencers get paid to do this by brands. As a kind of cause, it was an interesting kind of what do we do here. The restaurants now in New York particularly don't like giving away free meals. In other parts of the world, some places people will give away free meals to influencers. New York's really going against that. They're kind of pushing against that, and they're saying, we don't want to give away free meals, but they actually want influencers to come. It's like this really weird dynamic. They don't want to talk about the relationship there. You don't want to say, I need you as an influencer, because they kind of go, we're the chef, we're telling you what to eat. But they also know that that's how business comes in. It's like TikTok referrals is how people find out about hot restaurants, and you end up with lines around the block. So there was this kind of intricate dance that we navigated to bring together social media influencers to restaurants and then marry them up. And then we amplified that. There was also a key role. So we had 46 restaurants taking part in the campaign. This was with very little effort. Places like Superiority Burger, Via Carota, Gramercy Tavern, Balbusta. And we got huge amount of featuring in press above the line, so groups like Bloomberg, media outlets, as well as social. And so we also then invited diners to post their bean dishes and to go into the chance to win prizes, including dining certificates, Beans is How t-shirts, and other products. We started testing also giving product to some of the restaurants. The restaurants had product, but they were like, oh, we'll take some extra beans and play with. And we think there's a real opportunity there in the future to kind of go deeper. But what some of the things around how we made it is we really wanted to have a low barrier to entry with a very simple sign-up process. This was a tension even between our own team. Our team developed a very complicated sign-in page, gave it to them, and the team we were working with that knew the restaurants, they just cut it in half, and they basically just said, nope, you don't need any of that information. Restaurants won't care, they won't do it. They come up with a very simple form. And then we provided a way to actually encourage them. So a lot of personal emailing to them, thanking them for being involved. We had somebody call them and speak to their team so that the chef got thanked, but then quickly got onto the team that actually implemented it, because most of these chefs are too busy. They don't, they want it to happen, but they're like, I got other stuff to do. And then we kind of had a whole range of different elements there. And so you can kind of go and check it out, and I'm happy to talk more. We then created a bunch of resources available. The idea with resources is some restaurants said, yeah, we want it, and other restaurants said, we don't want to touch it. And you couldn't really guess where it was. The whole idea was just create it so that you can, just in case people want it. Like some people said, we're never putting anything on our tables because our tables are out, like they're protected. Others were like, colouring sheet, I love it. Like one of the hottest, trendiest restaurants, they love the colouring sheet because that's their brand. It's like people are drawing on the walls and writing on crayons, and it's just kind of what it is. But another restaurant, Grand Mercy, they're like, we don't want, like that is not what our brand is. So you've got to kind of be a bit flex. And so we created a bit of this and then tried to make that available. But there's a little bit more to learn on how we drive that forward. So in the end, ended up with 100 chefs, restaurants, content creators participating, 4 million Instagram followers reached, a number of new companies and coalition members, and then 50 restaurants across 5 New York City boroughs, and Jersey City got creative with Beans. So there was a lot of kind of just ability to start on there. We got Beans on the Menu went really high as a kind of hashtag as well, and there was some really clever content. Like there was one where somebody got they have these kids that go and look at restaurants, and it's just the funniest thing ever. But I think it's called Food Baby New York. But they were like, Beans on the Menu, yeah, woo, and like the content they created was just insanely addictive, and we could never even dreamed of it. So really, really, really key there. The other thing we've been looking at is Beans in schools. This is something we're developing, and it's going to be a similar, it's not as far along at this stage, but we have kind of started there in developing that, and we can talk more. And then just, some of the lessons that we've learned were, you've got to really use social influencers to lift an in-person campaign to that digital world. And so it's about how do you kind of bring the restaurant out into the world and then bring the world back into the restaurant. And so looking at that, the TikTok and IG really drive food trends. And so there's a huge amount of interest on press talking about beans, which has then generated all kinds of conversations right from the UN to big companies coming and saying, hey, I saw an article about beans, and can you tell us, we were in Condé Nast's headquarters doing stuff for Bon Appetit staff, there was a lot of things that didn't break out yet, but they've put in the foundation for relationships as well. And I think sometimes focusing on a timing was something that could help focus engagement. Sometimes we launch these things and we keep them going all year, but it's about like picking a month or something. We're never going to do it for 6 to 8 weeks again. We're going to do it for a month because it was too long. You can't get people's attention. And then think about the way that you provide all of those kinds of activities.
Lots of questions, but we'll carry on so we can fit everyone in.
Very interesting. I agree with what you said at the end there, with all media coming back to social media. You have to have that mainstream media as well as social media. They definitely work together. And I also want to say, I'm wanting to go to your house for dinner at some point after your presentation. So just to introduce ourselves, I'm Joanna.
Max, nice to meet you.
And we co-run Root the Future in Thailand. And we're not selling anything, we're not a brand, we're basically just social media team, I suppose. We work in lots of different areas and we use social media to kind of raise awareness, I guess. But we don't have a product or anything, so we're just using social media as a platform to kind of spread the word.
I think it sort of resonates what we do with what these guys have said before. It's just providing value. You just have to provide value and not think of social media as a sales avenue. Obviously, sales come through, but if you're providing value, then you're actually giving, you're creating a community rather than sales-based.
Yeah, I agree as well. The product picture, like no one will share that in their stories. Can you imagine? Like seeing a random product in someone's stories, you have to create something shareable. So who's Root the Future? I was saying before, like I said, we don't have any products or anything, so we produce content, social media content, and long-form content as well, which we started doing now. We have campaigns, loads of different campaigns. We have Plant-Based Food Awards, which is the picture there. We've also done a similar restaurant competition that you guys did with Pulses. What other campaigns do we do?
Oh, loads. We have a list that I think what we're going to do now is just kind of go through a number of different campaigns that we have done over the past year or so, and just outline certain key features that we think that made them successful or not so successful. And then at least you can sort of perhaps use that as a takeaway to implement in your own campaigns.
And also events as well, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but all of these things essentially are successful or not successful because of social media. It's essentially what most of our campaigns come down to. Next.
So this is us. In its essence, we just leverage our social media to bridge that gap between an online audience and offline campaigns. So everything that we're going to go through now, you'll see how we use or utilize our community in order to make an event or a campaign successful.
Whoops.
Back. Can you go back?
Can I go back is the question.
Can you go back one more?
There we
go.
Okay, so these are the different ways in which we leverage social media for our campaigns. There's a number of campaigns that we did in our first year of running when we really didn't have a big following yet, but the following we did have was very loyal. And we did a few in-person events that were so successful only because of social media. And one of the key things at the very beginning for us was influencer collaboration. And I mean, it's a bit easier for us versus maybe brands because often influencers, when they work with brands, they want to get paid, right? But because we are only about the mission, influencers are very keen to get on board and just help spread the message about sustainable food. So that was very lucky for us that we were able to kind of leverage influencers so easily at the beginning for our first year. That was pivotal.
I think there's pros and cons for influencers as well, because on one hand, you can tell that they have a huge audience. They have their network, and it could be 1, 2 to 10 million, but it might not convert. People follow these people because of their lifestyle, and if your product doesn't fit within that lifestyle, then you might be spending a lot of money to ask this influencer to promote your product or your brand, but that might not convert at all.
Yeah, like Amelia probably wouldn't send beans to a fashion influencer, I'm guessing.
Wouldn't
so you have to choose your influencers. Also, controversial conversations. I think also Amelia touched on this a little bit with Oatly. Oatly is always one that comes to my mind when we talk about the voice of your brand. And I think that they did that so well, and their voice is so recognizable, just even the descriptions that they use in Instagram. Sometimes that's all there really is to the piece of content, is the description. But their voice is so unique, and what they're saying is either controversial or funny, or they actively engage their followers to participate in the social media content. That it's controversial conversations, I think, is key for Oatly, but they're so successful in how they did that.
You kind of have to play on the controversy a little bit, because hug the haters, because they will help you grow.
This is Max's forte. If we ever post anything that's a little bit controversial and we know we're going to get a bit of something from that, I will leave the phone and the laptop alone, and Max will be there for, I don't know, 2 days.
And it will go viral.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
yeah.
And people who are hating on the content, Max is responding to them in our voice, in Root the Future's voice. And
very logically, very calm,
Yeah.
very reasoned.
you end up with hundreds of comments, and these people who hate your post have actually pushed it to
You have
so
to
many
hug
people.
those haters.
We had that once. We said, you'll never eat a roast potato again. And we had crispy butter beans. And honestly, I certainly will eat a roast potato again. And it really riled people up. And obviously, it was just, another way to have butter beans. We were like, we love all you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's organic growth. That is organic growth. It's not paid. You're not putting any ads on that. You're just hugging the haters, because the more comments and the more likes or hate that you get on that post, the more it will be pushed to another audience, the more other people will see it that are outside of your echo chamber.
And that controversy also adds to personality, the personality of your brand, or the personality of your page, or what you're trying to share as well. I think as well, Amelia touched on this as well, giveaways. We obviously don't have products, but we do giveaways for maybe our campaigns or our events, or if there's a campaign that we want to push, or for example, for Climate Cycle we did last year, to get people to actively participate in the campaign, we did giveaways. So whether that's to increase the promotion of your product, or even just to get people to engage more in your social media, giveaways and product giveaways have been really useful for us.
You do have to play on the fact that your social media has an algorithm, and the algorithm will look at aspects of a post, and they will think, oh, okay, let's grab that aspect and push it to this group of people, or this to this people. And right now, always using a face is one of those great algorithmic techniques that you can sort of play on. You put a face on that Instagram feed or Facebook feed, and people will, it's pushed because they know from their experience and their research that people appreciate that, and they will like that more than just a picture of a table.
I'm going to skip the rest of these, otherwise we're going to be talking for a while. Like I was saying before, everything that we do is promoted or shared via social media, and sometimes the campaigns that maybe haven't done so well, the social media content is there, and sometimes that is more important than the campaign itself, depending on,
Especially if you want to show busyness. If you're showing that you have a lot of people or a large community, and you have a line of people, you can make it look like there's hundreds of people in that line, and they want that demand. The trick is to show demand so other people think, oh, yeah, I'll jump in on that. That's a bit of FOMO.
So we're just going to run through some of the projects that we've done and how we've used social media in a few different ways to promote those projects. So something we've done a couple of times, actually, I'm not sure if we've got it later in the, but if anyone's got Instagram on their phones, the augmented reality filter is something we've used a couple of times. We did it for a US Beans and US Pulse's Chef's Table last year as well. If you go to our Instagram, Root the Future, you can either click on the story and there's a bean filter. You can put beans on your face in the filter.
Get your phones out.
Yeah, this is a great way.
I want to see those phones.
So the augmented reality filter is a great way to get other people to share your content. It's user-generated content, so they're essentially doing the work for you. And you can either use that to share your message, or people will share that hoping that you will share that again, which is what we got a lot.
So that's very short-form content. A lot of the augmented reality filters, that's 15 seconds usually, but we can also extend that to documentary level long-form formats. So that's for a different market entirely, obviously, but same campaign. So for the Climate Cycle, we cycled from Chiang Mai to Phuket, which is 1,600 kilometers in 10 days. So for a short form content, the AR stories were great.
And we also did live videos. So to launch it, so we had the Instagram stories, we had posts, we have the long documentary, we have live video for launch, and we also had live videos every day.
That's
so really,
throughout on the bike itself, facing
and on
the
top
cyclist.
of that, we had the giveaway. So it really was a selection of all these different types of social media strategies just to try and promote this the one project. And the same kind of thing with the festivals and the markets that we've done in Bangkok, sustainability food festivals and markets, is all about using social media to get that hype. And this is very similar to the last ones we've done, Facebook groups, this is Max's forte, and the comments with the haters, controversy, and influencers as well. Another key for us has been influencers. They've been, very helpful to us
Invaluable.
getting the message out. So the Innovate Your Plate and Chef's Table last year, 2022, we did a very similar restaurant competition. We got restaurants around Thailand, the whole country, to create the most innovative dishes from beans and lentils possible. And again, we used a number of different ways to use social media to promote this. And like I said, one of those was the bean face filter. Please go to Instagram and use it. It's so much fun.
You can see it.
Through the future, you can see it on our stories.
Look on Instagram.
It's actually the bottom right. You can see the beans falling from the sky.
You've got pulses on your cheeks and it's snowing.
But this is the kind of thing you want. You want something that followers want to share. Something that they're excited to participate in and something that they want to share for their friends to see or their followers to see.
Again, you're providing value to them. You're providing entertainment at something that's not necessarily entertaining. We're talking about beans, but we've created a face filter where beans are on their face and it's falling around them. You're creating content about something that is inevitably going to increase your bottom line.
And for the winners at the end of this, we had 3 restaurants that won, and we put together an influencer collaboration chef's table. So we basically invited, I think it was about 50 people together. So we had media, print media, and influencers, and they all came, tasted this amazing food, and we ended up with 50 influencers creating content for us about these restaurants and their amazing dishes that they made, as well as a couple of ticket giveaway winners. But yeah, so that's kind of a rounded way. Oh, and the Plant-Based Food Awards as well. I forgot we had another one.
The Plant-Based Food Awards is
very similar.
It's also great because we had, this is actually when we first started, so this was a great sort of catalyst for us, where we even had table stands in all of the plant-based restaurants. And it's all publicly voted food awards. So
you're getting people to actively participate, and then they feel emotionally connected to their favorites, as well as also promoting the competition.
So then they'd go to our website, they'd fill in the form, and after 2.5 months, we ended up with almost 30,000 emails. And X amount of,
And the live video that we did, that was during the second round of COVID in Thailand, which everyone had to stay at home. So we did a live video, Oscars-style announcement for the winners. That was a lot of fun. But it's just another type of content to get people involved. Everyone was very excited, even though it was a live video rather than an in-person Oscars event. We got a lot of excitement about that, people joining the live video, and also influencers joining.
Leveraging those influencers in that live video, and you get an extra 2,000-3,000 people watching on live video. It's pretty good.
So yeah, I think the key thing that we have found is, consistency, and also a selection of different types of social media that engage your audience and indirectly kind of promote the message or your brand. Yeah, that's kind of our takeaways.
Yeah. Here you go.
Thank you. Let's see, just this one.
Oh. Yeah.
There it is. So I'm Alexa, I'm with Lotus in the UK, and happy to be here today on this panel. It's kind of already been mentioned how brands can leverage user-generated content, so this is a good segue for me. Okay, come on. Do that. So just in case anyone in the audience doesn't know, what is user-generated content and what makes it useful? So user-generated content from a brand perspective is your customers basically creating content for you. So user-generated content, one of the big appeal of using that is that it's it's associated to be more authentic and more trusted. So people trust other people. This is kind of your modern day word of mouth. So, if me as a marketer or you as a brand are saying something, that's great, but a consumer is really looking for friends, family, or people they follow to be validating those claims that you're making. User-generated content can really create a sense of community. People want to be part of something outside themselves, and by being able to generate user-generated content for your brand, they kind of feel like they're part of your brand's growth story rather than just being a spectator. What's also great about it is it can be cost-effective. Like Joanna said, it's basically your customers doing your marketing for you. And like Paul said, you get kind of a diverse bank of content that you wouldn't get if just you, the brand, were generating it. So I'm going to give a little bit of a case study today, and I'm sorry to enter something other than beans into the BeanCon equation. My example is from seafood, which is the other hat that I wear. And this is an example of using big moment publicity to get user-generated content for our client, Alaska Seafood. So we teamed up in London with our brand partner, Leap. Leap creates this beautiful line of smoked salmon and fresh salmon. They do use Alaska products. They've been a great partner for many years. And we wanted to really create kind of like a PR stunt in a really public place that would help drive user-generated content and ultimately drive sales. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later because we do sell something. So I need fellow Americans who were alive and watching TV in the 90s. Anyone? So I don't know if anyone remembers Billy Bass, but it was this really tacky kind of gag gift. It looks just like that. So it's this fish. You'd put it on your wall, and it would kind of sing and dance, and really obnoxious and really funny. So we decided to kind of tap into that 90s nostalgia that everyone is into right now. We brought Billy back to life, and we put him in London's Waterloo station. So Waterloo is, if you've been to London, one of the busiest stations. It can have about 1 million people coming in and out of it every day. So we did this Waterloo takeover. We had the singing fish. When passersby would come by, they could push a button and the fish would sing. We had billboards everywhere. Our goal in this case was not just social media, but also driving sales. So we did have a QR code. People could go online. They could watch a full-length commercial that was airing on YouTube. And they could find out where to buy Leap products in London. So hoping my video will play. We probably don't have...
Here at Leap, we believe that the best fish should swim free from the deepest, wildest oceans to your house. Bon appetit! Go on and take a leap. Don't eat a fish like me. You take a leap, take a leap, take a leap, take a leap.
So it's cheesy, but it does catch attention, as you can see. So we've talked a little bit about kind of traditional publicity, and in this case, we did get some good media coverage. We got 1.53 million online coverage from kind of more traditional consumer or industry titles. But that really wasn't the point of this campaign, and I think probably in all of our countries, there is sort of a move away in some sense from people trusting mainstream media titles. So in this case, the user-generated content was really the point because people trust other people. They don't want to hear it from the brand. They don't even necessarily want to hear it from the media. They want to see it and hear it from other people. So the commuters taking videos, getting their reaction shots, that was really, really the point of the campaign, to get that trust differential of, oh, they're into Leap. Okay, I believe that. We think the publicity worked. One lesson learned that I think, looking at like what Paul did, Paul had a really good, easy campaign hashtag. So we weren't quite that smart this time around. We didn't have the perfect campaign hashtag. So unless people were tagging Leap or tagging Alaska Seafood, it was a little trickier to actually track the user-generated content. So I think that's kind of a learning that we would take forward. Maybe do some kind of competition where if you follow us, that, just so that we can get better analytics on it. But we do know, we do have some other ways to track it so that we know that 7.3 million views on Leap's social media channels in the weeks following the campaign. That's 120% over industry benchmarks. And then we know, because we had the YouTube video, 3.4 million views or 13,000 hours of video watch time on this commercial on YouTube. It also played on Sky TV, so we have good numbers from that too. And then the thing that was really cool is that we tested for consumer awareness of the brand and of the product immediately following the campaign, and we saw an increase of 5.2 points in consumer awareness of the Leap brand, which was great. Okay. So yeah, I've kind of alluded to this, but we didn't just want this to be social media in a vacuum with no call to action, nothing tied to it. So essentially, we had our PR stunt. It was amplified online with all this user-generated content. We had greater storytelling online where people could click through or use the QR code to go to the website, find out more about Leap, watch the full commercial. And then ultimately, we did have a call to action to go find Leap brand in stores. So we were trying to follow that full customer journey. And we did that through geo-targeted digital ads that were kind of ring-fenced around stores that were selling and promoting Alaska seafood to ultimately get that conversion. So this is obviously an example of kind of going really big to get user-generated content. And big campaigns do come with big budgets, but I don't want you to be deterred. This is very scalable and very accessible way of getting content. So I've shown here a few examples of other brands and different ways of using user-generated content that pretty much anyone can use at any price point, small brands, startups, et cetera. So one that I really love down at the bottom is, obviously everyone probably knows cosmetics brand Sephora. So on their website, they have an online beauty insider community. So people go into stores, order stuff online, and they can immediately share photos, give tips, how did I like it, reviews online, and it's this interactive gallery that anyone can access. Like I said, competitions can be a really effective way of getting user-generated content. This one is from Vitamix, which is the blender brand. So they had Team Nourish, where you could share your really nutrient-dense smoothies, and Team Flourish, where you could share your really Instagrammable smoothies. Each team was led by a different influencer, and they kind of competed with these carousels of Nourish versus Flourish. And then the last one that I like, because it's really committing to user-generated content, Jones Soda allowed their customers to send in photos, and you would compete for a chance to get your photo printed on an actual label on a bottle of Jones Soda. So very cool. And again, people, feel a part of this community. They feel they're involved in your brand story. It fosters trust in the brand, and ultimately, hopefully, gains engagement or conversions or whatever your end goal is.
Amazing. I love that. I don't know if Jamie's here from Heyday Canning, but they did an amazing campaign in New York, which you should all check out. It's on shared on TikTok. But they did a pop-up shop where you'd trade in a can of old beans for a can of their beans, and they had queues around the corner. The content went viral. They were selling out, and it was just a similar thing of one of those moments that you can create through in real life. The actual people that were queuing up, it wasn't that wasn't the marketing, it was the amazing social media that came off the back of it. And I think it's so interesting hearing it from a similar category, because I know Fish said, Fred, I know the company, and essentially it's a commodity product, and you can get basically the same product from supermarket own label, but that brand has seen so much success, and it shows that through campaigns like that, you can create a humor and a characteristic that a customer can hold on to and think, actually, I'm going to try Leap salmon, even though it's pretty much the same thing as the thing down low. So it's so worth investing in those sorts of campaigns. We haven't got that long left. I've got questions, but I want to first throw out to the audience because I want to make sure we can cover it. Does anyone have any questions? No questions?
Well done.
No questions. Okay, so great. I think it's one thing that's really often spoken about on social media is the difference between engagement and reach. And I think particularly if people are working with influencers, particularly if you're paying for influencers, there is a difference. And I was curious to know, how do you value different levels? If you're doing a paid partnership with an influencer, what should you be looking for? What's the difference between reach and engagement? Do any of you have a view on that?
I actually have a long Excel sheet.
Oh, I love it.
Hopefully not to share with everybody.
I like stats. I like stats. And I think that just having a big list of all these different influencers, writing down their topic of lifestyle choice, whether that's food or clothing or whatever, and then just showing their reach, and then having a look at it the following month, and then the following month. And I've had that backdated for a year or so. And I think that it's important to have that, because there are some influencers that have paid for their followers.
Yeah, because reach can be paid,
and
right?
the reach can also be paid, so you really do have to concentrate or at least manage who you're going to be using for a campaign.
Yeah, I think engagement is definitely, like, even if the engagement number is like significantly lower than the reach number, it's so much more beneficial, because, like, reach could be.
Yeah.
So engagement for anyone is how many people are commenting on the post and whether it's driving a conversation. And that's kind of why you were talking about that controversy being really good for engagement, and then it leading to really great viral content. And then reach is, when it gets like thousands and thousands of views, it's just how many are going through. So arguably, followers aren't really that important. It's about, are they engaging? Have they got an engaged community? And we believe that actually micro influencers are really powerful, because people feel even more connected to them. So you shouldn't just be looking for followers, basically.
Yeah, I think you have to think about, personally, how connected would you have to be to a brand or a page to comment versus just liking? Like, there's such a big difference in actively participating with engaging, commenting, rather than just seeing it on your feed or just liking it. Like, there's such a big difference in how connected you are to that page.
It's an indicator of a community and the amount of people that they reach specifically. If it's just a like, no one will actually engage or look at the content of the post. It would just be lost to the void. So I think you have to look at the actual engagement and look at the depth of the comments as well, not just an emoji here, an emoji there. It should just be an actual back-forth conversation.
They say the best communities are ones where actually the brands aren't talking. So if you go on Facebook, there are Facebook groups for people who are obsessed with Nespresso pods. And Nespresso never post on there. It's just all of them comparing their Lungo to their, I don't know, the other one, Venti or whatever, discussing the different flavor profiles. And that is the dream case for any brand. They want people to be talking about them and them not having to do anything. A bit like the big moment content. It's like Leap weren't doing anything. They were just being themselves, and then everyone else is engaging with it. And I think that is part of that authenticity story as well.
On the other side of that, just to add, although, it's great to have everyone do it, but on the other side of that, talk about Oatly, right? They do actively participate in their comments, and that is also a big part of their brand. Like, I personally, if I see an Oatly post, I'll go and read their responses to other people's comments.
And what do they like?
They're so funny, they're
Very
so witty, and so on brand that just the responses to the comments on their post is engaging.
That's so cool.
I just think they're genius.
If your brand doesn't have a voice, then you haven't reached the right group of people yet. You need to think exactly what that voice is and how you want to put yourself, or how you want your brand to be perceived in front of
Yeah, you almost want to write a profile of who is the voice of my social media, and write down their personality traits.
Keywords.
So when you do have a post or a description or a comment, you know exactly how you would respond to that.
We have characteristics in our tone of voice. So we use a lot of capitalization sometimes to show that we're full of beans and really excited about something. We will never use we're never really punctual, and we're loose and conversational because we want to be friendly and accessible. And I think it's so easy not to value these tiny things when it comes to brand, but the more you invest in it. And I think the crucial thing is having the people who are doing your content to believe and be passionate about what they're doing, and also to believe in the importance of tone of voice, the importance of consistency, and really ignite them, because they are the make or break really to the success of content. I think people behind it have to believe in it.
I think you can see how successful social media is just by how the tone of the description, right? If it sounds like an ad, their social media page has probably not got any followers.
When we first started Root the Future, we didn't necessarily think, oh, we should add Joe or I into or as a brand. Probably the same, perhaps the same with your brand as well. But it inevitably goes that way because
it's a really cheap way of building authenticity.
it really is. Yeah. People like to see people talk about and they feel a connection with somebody if there's a unique connection.
Definitely, and it becomes like a challenge. Obviously I'm building Bold Bean Co, and naturally my time is spent further away from the content. I'm, speaking to supermarkets and negotiating with partners. So it's really hard to prioritize. But the reality is social media has been, I think, the core reason for our success. So I have to continue prioritizing it, even though it might seem silly or like, is this really gonna add anything? But that connection is really crucial at building trust.
Yeah, I do think sometimes social media can feel super shallow. And it feels like, oh, do we really need to do a post about this? But at the end, like, it really makes such a difference, even though it feels like, oh, it's just social media, right? But it's so much more than that. Even though when you're doing it all the time, it feels, repetitive.
It shouldn't be an afterthought. I mean,
Yeah.
if done well, it's a big part of your strategy and can be really effective. I think the only time it doesn't work is when you are just kind of, I need to post on Thursday at 3. Like, that's not going to be good content. It has to be really, meaningful.
I think having just like a strategy, going in on it and committing to it and really investing in it is the key. And hopefully you can all go away and think, okay, what one thing am I going to do to leverage social media? And just choose one thing. It could be one campaign, one moment, or focus on your own content. But just do that one thing really well, and it will make a big difference.
Yeah. Or if you're not part of the social media team, maybe think about increasing the social media budget.
It's important.
It's
and
always
empowering
undervalued.
Well, I think that's about it. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And also, we have a Beans is How coalition get-together from Pool now. So over to you, Paul.
I heard this is happening in the swimming pool. Is that?
There we go.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. That was such an interesting panel. It's interesting to sit out here in the audience and watch all of you just really come alive as you're talking about this. I can feel your passion, and it's very inspiring.